You read about it first in our June DLE Hub. Our Hub newsletter editor, Ginger Henry Kuenzel, was recently featured on the cover of Lake George Living magazine. The publication highlighted her spirit as a journalist, touching on her passion for the Adirondacks and protecting Lake George. The DLE sat down to learn more about her story. I read your article and it seems like you've had quite an engaging story.
Yeah, it's been a good life.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, can you kind of talk about your passion for journalism and how it's impacted your life?
Yeah, I actually always loved writing. And when I was a kid, I would write stories, just made up little stories. And then after college, I got a job working in Congress, writing just sort of political stuff. And I decided I didn't really like that. It was kind of Vietnam and Watergate. It was a bad time to be in Washington. So I decided to move to Europe.
Right.
And yeah, it wasn't that easy to get a job in Europe. First, I was just hitchhiking around, and then I settled down and I just had to do odd jobs. And one of the things I spoke about at a DLE years ago was whatever you're doing, just get the most out of it and use it to learn new skills. So, I was working as a chambermaid at first because it was the only job I could get, but I was learning German. So, because I was living in Germany and talking to Germans all the time. So, so no matter what I was doing, I was always learning. And I would write letters back home. This was way before the days of email or cell phones or internet or anything like that. So actually writing real letters. And one of my friends said, wow, these are really good travelogues. I think you should pitch some to some publications. And as I recall, she had taken a course or was taking a course in how to pitch stories to publications. And so she sent me a whole list of newspapers, magazines, and who the editors were and what their mailing address was really, and what kinds of stories they used. So just all the information I would need. And so I just thought, well, I will just send them off. And I had some good luck right at first. I think if I had gotten a lot of rejections right away, I probably would have just not pursued it. But I had some really good luck at first, and then I had a real long dry spell, but I kind of already knew, oh, okay, I can do this. So, yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And, living in Germany in the 80s, there really were not that many American journalists there. So it was kind of easy to write things. And then I wasn't just doing travel stories. I was covering politics and art and just different things. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Oh, so what made you pick Europe and Germany specifically?
Well, I really just was going to go to Europe and hitchhike until I had saved some money. I'd been working for 3 years. So a friend, my roommate actually at the time, she said, well, let's just go to Europe and stay in youth hostels and see how long we can make our money last. And I don't know if you've heard of this book called Europe on $5 a day, but you actually could do that back then.
Very
um,
cool.
yeah, I mean, hitchhiking, so you had no transportation costs. We were just buying food in grocery stores, just like bread and cheese and maybe some yogurt. Um, Always willing if somebody wanted to take us out to dinner. We were very happy to go out to dinner. And if people invited us to stay with them, so we were just very friendly and we met a lot of people. And sort of about after we had been there for about 3 or 4 weeks, we went to Munich and went to Oktoberfest. And I met a guy at Oktoberfest who I later married. And that's how I ended up in Germany.
Oh, what a story. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, because we were traveling everywhere. I mean, we went up to Scandinavia, we went down to um, Romania and Yugoslavia and Greece and Turkey. It was a little harder to go to Eastern Europe, so we didn't spend a lot of time in like Czechoslovakia or anything like that. But Oh, we did go to East Germany, just for the day when we were in Berlin. But, let me ask you, so my next book, I'm thinking about writing about this trip. And I'm just wondering if you think there's interest like among people in your generation for that kind of lifestyle from 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I already am very interested at the moment, so
Okay.
I'd love to hear more stories.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I kept really good journals because I like to write, and I still have all those. So I have always said I'm going to write this book, and then other books kind of have gotten in the way. And but now I really do think this is my next one.
Oh, very cool. Yes, that sounds very compelling.
Yeah. So I got married. I worked for a couple of magazines in Munich. Still was working freelance for American magazines. And there were a couple of English language magazines in Munich, so I worked for them. I had, kids. Actually, this is a part of the story. My younger child was actually born in a VW bus during Oktoberfest. So
Oh, no way. That's wild.
yeah, that's a great story.
Can you talk about your experience writing and selling books? How did you start getting into that, and how's that journey been for you?
So, the first book I wrote was about, so I live in a town on Lake George that's really small. It's a big summer town. Lots of people have summer homes here, but in the winter it's about 600 people. And I've been here my whole life. I mean, I obviously went other places too, but I was actually born here. My family goes back generations, mainly as summer people. But because we lived here year round for a number of years, I'm kind of accepted as both a local and a summer person. So I like to write tongue-in-cheek things. And one of the magazines I was working for in Germany, that it's actually a magazine that writes in English for Germans that want to learn English and want to learn about countries where English is spoken. So I was working for them in Munich, doing a lot of features. And then when I moved back to the States, which was in 95, they asked if I would still write. And I said, yes. And then in about 2010, they asked if I would do a monthly column. So I've been doing a monthly column for 15 years. What, 12 times a year. So that's a lot of columns. And a lot of them were about this little town because I was kind of living here and I didn't really have much else to write about. For the first 10 years, it was really about life in a small town in America. And I think people in Germany really enjoyed reading that because you don't really know how it really is in a small town in another country. And
Right.
of course it was tongue in cheek, so a lot of it was very exaggerated and made up. But it was based on fact. And so I just decided, well, people love reading this stuff. How about if I just pick maybe 15 of the best ones and put them together in a book? And the hardest part was kind of coming up with a structure because I made a town, I invented a town and just kind of rewrote the things about people in these towns, but they were sort of based on the columns. So yeah, I mean, working remotely, or just going to town board meetings. I mean, it was just tons of different ideas. And of course, everyone in town bought the book. So I
Nice.
published it on Amazon, which I had to learn how to do that. And so this was back in maybe 2019. Yeah, I think it was before the pandemic. And so I learned how to do that. And it's not that hard once you figure it out. And Amazon is a great place to publish books because it's print on demand. So they send you upload everything, you order a trial copy or whatever, and they send it to you a hard copy so you can make sure everything looks good. And then you can order author copies, but also other people can order as regular, they pay more. So if you, I mean, it's a large markup. So I would sell the books to bookstores around here for $10. They would sell it for 15. And so they were making, they were making a nice profit, but so was I, because I was paying a lot less than that. And so, a lot of bookstores here, they, in the whole region, they really like local authors, and they like to promote local authors. And we don't really have a bookstore in our town, but we have a general store that sells books. And a lot of the stories took place in the general store, and the general store is on the cover. So it was a good place to be selling them. So it's a historical picture of the general store from, like, I don't know, early 1900s. So you can kind of tell that's what it is. So I said it was a fictional town, but people knew where it was. And everybody wanted to know if they were going to be in the book. And then they either said, well, I don't really want to be in the book because I don't know what you're going to say about me, and it might be embarrassing. And then I'd say, okay, you're not in the book. And then they'd say, oh, well, no, I really do want to be in the book.
That's funny.
So everybody had to buy it to see if they were in it or not.
I feel like that's a good tactic though, because then, you'll have to find
Really
out, wait
good.
and see.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So what's next in the next chapter in Ginger's life?
Yeah, so basically I do want to start that book about hitchhiking through Europe.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I've sort of got to figure out how much. So I actually, when I was really young, my dad bought a camping trailer, and it was early 50s, and we just traveled around in the US because he was kind of looking for another job. So I feel like that's a really fun story. And I have his journal, and it kind of fits in with, wow, that might have been what gave me my first taste of wanting to be a vagabond. And so I don't know. I'm going to start writing about Europe and see how I can weave other things in as well. But I'm also, I'm very active in an environmental advocacy group for Lake George that takes up a lot of time. Lake George Association, and then president of our historical society here in Hague, and very active on some town committees and boards. So a lot going on.
Sounds like it. Well, definitely you have one buyer for your next book for sure.
Oh,
Definitely,
good.
definitely. Yeah, anything else you'd like to plug in for the DLE community to know about? I mean, I know you already mentioned a lot, but floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a website, so it's just utopianstate.com, which is my domain. And you can find the books, all four well, actually three of the books. One book I wrote with another environmental group, and they just didn't want to go through Amazon, so you can't actually order that book online. But so one book is I wrote with a park ranger that managed the island on Lake George for most of his career, and he had a lot of stories about the islands over the decades. So that's one. So it's sort of regional history, and then the book about this town, and then the latest one is this racing book. So
Ooh,
the Buzz on Lake George.
very
And
cool.
that's been really fun. So my dad was a race boat driver. My brothers were both race boat drivers.
Wow.
And I inherited a lot of archives from the old boat races from the early part of the 1900s and then the mid 1900s. And so I always knew I needed to do something with them because I was just kind of the keeper of them. But I wanted to, I mean, this book has like tons of photographs of old race boats, and yeah, it's
Mm.
really a lot of pictures and stories from I was fortunate to be able to get in touch with a lot of the race boat drivers from the 50s who are still around, and they were really happy to tell their stories. So there's a lot of those in there, and it's been really fun. I mean, I was just corresponding today with a guy who had bought a restored race boat, and he wanted to know if I knew anything about this particular boat, which I didn't, but I did look it up to see if it had raced in the races here, because I have a list of all the boats that raced here, and that one didn't. But he was happy that he could ask. And yeah, so I've just met tons and tons of people that are
Very,
connected with the racing.
very cool. Yeah. I love how many different avenues you take with writing. That's really cool. You have travel, racing,
I know, yeah. And
storytelling. It sounds like very cool.
one of the things that they did in this magazine is they have a picture. She did a good job with the pictures. Well, one whole page is like old family photos, which is nice. But this one, like,
Mhm.
she let me put all my books on the table, and that was nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's all about promotion. You have to be a
Cool.
good self-promoter.
Got to sell yourself for sure.
You do,
Um,
you do. And in a way that's not annoying, that like sparks people's interest.
exactly. Exactly.